Have you ever felt like you're doing everything right, yet life still feels out of sync? Like you're showing up, staying kind, staying open, staying faithful, but the results just don't show? Maybe you followed every step that should have worked. You've prayed when no one else saw. You've held on to hope in silence. You've smiled when your heart was aching, and still breakthrough seems delayed. My friend, you are not alone. This is not the voice of failure. This is not the consequence of being forgotten. This is a season, one that the world doesn't know how to interpret, but one that heaven sees clearly. There comes a point in every journey where the battle is no longer about doing more, performing harder, or trying to convince others, or even yourself, that you're enough. That point is now, because Jesus never called us into performance. He called us into presence. And what if, just maybe, this isn't a moment for you to strive, but to come back into alignment, not with pressure, but with peace. Not to earn your worth, but to remember your place. A place not defined by results or applause, but by relationship. You were never just called to believe in God. You were called to belong to Him. To sit, to breathe, to be. He doesn't just want to provide for you. He wants to be your place. A place where your identity isn't questioned. A place where your voice doesn't have to compete. A place where being with Him becomes your true breakthrough. Let me tell you something deeply personal. Something we often don't hear in the noise of life. You don't need to be fearless to be faithful. We live in a culture that glorifies constant strength. Don't show weakness, they say. Keep moving, keep grinding. But what if the shaking steps you took, even when you were unsure, were actually the loudest declarations of your faith? What if the trembling prayers, the tears you wiped before anyone noticed, the days you kept showing up when your soul was worn out, what if those counted more than you realized? They did. Every shaky yes you whispered, every time you resisted the urge to quit, was seen. You thought faith looked like fire, but sometimes faith looks like survival. Like just staying soft when bitterness is easier. Like just staying when running makes more sense. That's the beauty of Jesus' way. He never asked for perfect strength. He asked for a willing heart. And if you've been wondering whether you've somehow disqualified yourself because you've doubted, because you've been discouraged, because you've paused and questioned, hear this. You are not disqualified. You are not too late. You are not forgotten. You're being reintroduced, not just to the world, but to yourself. The version of you that believed. The version of you that knew they were chosen. And maybe right now, that feels like a stretch to believe. Maybe your heart feels buried under expectations, under disappointments, under delays. But none of that changed the truth. Not His truth. You are still His, and He still calls you home. Now pause and think. When was the last time you sat, not to perform, not to fix, not to beg, but just to be reminded, just to be loved? Not by the world, not by your achievements, but by the one who knows every scar, every fear, every silent moment of your pain. The one who called you before the titles, before the trauma, before the confusion, before you were anything to anyone else. You were His. And He's saying now, not out of correction, but out of love, come back. Not because you failed, but because you've forgotten. Forgotten how deeply you're loved. Forgotten how enough you already are. Forgotten that joy, peace, and purpose don't start with outcomes. They start with presence, with sitting again, with remembering again. So I ask you today not to hustle harder, not to prove more, but to pause, to let your soul breathe again, to hear that quiet whisper saying, you are mine, you are ready, you are home. Because true strength isn't always about pushing forward. Sometimes true strength is about coming back to the truth, coming back to who you are when all the noise fades, coming back to the gentle, unwavering love that never left your side. That's the reset. That's the homecoming. And it's not too late. Not for you. Not for the dreams buried deep. Not for the hope that's grown quiet. You are loved. You are seen. And this is just the beginning. There's something sacred about silence, but let's be honest. Silence can feel brutal, especially when you're desperate for answers, especially when you're carrying burdens that no one knows about. You've smiled for the world while your soul quietly aches. You've encouraged others while secretly wondering if God still hears you. And in those moments, it's easy to believe the lie that silence means absence. That pain means punishment. That unanswered prayers mean you've been overlooked. But here's the truth. Jesus was never absent in your suffering. He was never indifferent. He wasn't watching from a distance, hoping you'd figure it out. No, he was present. Not just when you worshiped, not just when you believed, but in your questions, in your weariness, in your hidden cries. He stood beside you when you didn't even know you were still standing. He heard the groans you couldn't put into words. He caught every tear that you quickly wiped away before anyone else could see. What if I told you that pain never disqualified you, but was shaping something wholly inside you? See, we've been taught to hide our wounds, to stay strong, and pretend nothing hurts. But Jesus doesn't heal the masks. We have to bring him the real thing, the raw, trembling, unfiltered heart. And he wants to touch the very places you've carried in silence. Not to shame you, but to set you free. Because pain has a voice, and if it's left unchecked, it starts to write your story. It whispers lies. You're not enough. You're too late. You're always forgotten. And if you've been running to prove those lies wrong by doing more, praying harder, or outperforming your pain, you're not alone. We've all done it. But Jesus never asked you to earn his love. He never measured your worth by your performance. He looked at you through the lens of promise, not perfection. He saw your heartbreak, your delay, your confusion, and he wasn't panicking. He was planting something deeper. While you prayed for the pain to leave, he was building a foundation that could carry the weight of the purpose he placed inside you. You asked him to remove the storm, but he strengthened your sails. You thought you were being delayed, but you were being developed. You thought the suffering would break you, but instead it birthed something in you, something real, something lasting, something that couldn't be faked or forced. Oil. Yes, oil. The kind that doesn't just bless your life, but blesses others. That oil came from every yes you whispered in the dark. Every time you chose love over bitterness. Every time you stayed when it would have been easier to quit. The oil is costly. It came through crushing. But now it flows, not from who you tried to be, but from who you became in the fire. And with that oil comes authority. Not a loud authority, not a prideful one, but a quiet strength. The kind of voice that makes others feel safe. The kind that brings healing. That's the voice Jesus is raising up in you now. You asked him why it took so long. Why the delay? Why others seemed to move forward while you were stuck in the wilderness? The answer may be painful, but it's powerful. Because he loved you too much to let the promise become your idol. He waited until your identity was in him, not in the outcome. Until you could receive without needing to control. Until you were able to speak with authority rooted in experience, not entitlement. And now, you don't just have answers. You've become the answer. Your story, your scars, your survival. They carry the keys to unlock healing in others. He didn't just want to bless you. He wanted to shape you into a blessing. And that kind of preparation takes time. Deep time. You've walked through nights darker than you thought you could bear. You've watched others get chosen while you stayed behind the curtain. You've celebrated others with tears in your eyes, wondering when it would be your turn. But through it all, your heart stayed tender. And that matters more than you know. Because in a world that numbs pain and hardens hearts, you stayed soft. That tenderness, that willingness to feel, to hope, to believe, it's holy. That's what drew Jesus near. Even when you didn't feel him, that soft heart kept you in alignment with your purpose. So hear this now. Your pain was never wasted. Every disappointment, every delay, every time you obeyed and nothing changed, none of it was pointless. You were not being punished. You were being prepared. And now, the season of silent survival is giving way to testimony. A testimony not built on theory, but on lived experience. You're not speaking from a platform. You're speaking from a valley you walked through. From ashes turned to beauty. From wounds turned to wisdom. And in that space, you carry something real. Something weighty. Something eternal. So don't hide your process. Don't edit your journey. Don't apologize for the road you walked. It was sacred ground. Jesus walked every step with you, not to make you shiny, but to make you deep. And now, your story carries release. It carries breakthrough. It carries light for others still in the dark. And soon, very soon, what once felt like loss will blossom into life. What once seemed delayed will be seen as divine timing. And you will know, without a shadow of a doubt, that He never left. He never forgot. And He never gave up on the masterpiece He was forming in you.